Something is dramatically broken in Canada's immigration system, and it didn't start just yesterday. It started years ago under the Justin Trudeau Liberals, and now, under Mark Carney, the problems continue. The housing crisis, the overcrowded schools, and the hospitals in some communities, the rising cost of living, all of it is connected. Not to immigrants themselves, of course, but to how recklessly and politically the system has been managed from Ottawa. And now, finally, the premiers of our provinces are starting to speak up. They just started doing that this weekend. They want more control. They want a say. But the real question is, can we fix this system before the damage becomes permanent to this country? And is Ottawa even listening to us at all? Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to comment, of course, as well. Let's rewind the clock, though. Under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Canada's immigration system shifted from measured and deliberate to chaotic and performative. He dramatically ramped up immigration numbers, astronomically ramped them actually, and without any serious thought about any of our infrastructure. By 2023, we had immigration levels, both permanent and temporary, that our housing supply simply could not support. That's not opinion, that's just fact, and it's echoed by economists and city planners and our premiers alike. Immigration targets skyrocketed, and he had even targeted by 2025 wanting 500,000 new permanent residents a year, not including hundreds of thousands of international students and temporary foreign workers. All this while housing starts were actually lagging behind and vacancy rates hit record lows. Rent inflation was exploding and social services have buckled. And Canadians are starting to really ask questions about this. They're just not getting the answers. And what they got in response is just basically virtue signaling. Anyone raising concerns was labeled intolerant, but it turns out it wasn't about xenophobia at all. It was about math. You cannot grow your population by over 1 million people a year and expect to maintain affordability or access to services unless you massively invest in infrastructure at the exact same time. Trudeau didn't, and it's proving to be no different under Mark Carney. Because if we fast forward to today, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, has he acknowledged the problem? Yeah, sure, he actually has acknowledged the immigration problem. Has he slowed things down? A bit, but not by much. The core issue still remains. He still believes immigration growth is the silver bullet for Canada's economy. Now, Carney talks about managing what we can control, as if this crisis was just handed over to him and he had nothing to do with it, not inherited from the party he leads right now. He's continuing Trudeau's multi-year immigration levels plan with only slight revisions. It's not enough to change anything. He says we need to match growth to labor market demand and absorptive capacity. But there's no evidence that this is actually happening. In fact, according to experts cited in Global News, most policies are still being made on the fly. You heard that right, with no real research or evidence-based framework. In fact, Michael Treblecock, a respected academic and co-author of multiple books on immigration policy, said it flat out. He said most of the policy decisions in Canada have been made, get this, research-free. The government doesn't seem to know how the various classes of immigrants are performing economically or what impact they're having on our social services. They don't know. How is that possible? It's not the immigrants' fault, by the way. It's the system's fault, and Canadians are losing trust in that system. Support for immigration is slipping in poll after poll, and instead of having a serious national conversation about some type of reform here, Ottawa is just tinkering around the edges, just for votes and nothing more. They don't want to change really anything. And now the provinces are getting fed up with it. And rightfully so. I mean, who could blame them? At a recent meeting in Huntsville, Ontario, the premiers called for more local control over immigration. They want to use their constitutional powers to take more ownership, especially around economic immigration and issuing work permits. Now, Doug Ford, who I'm, as you know, no longer a supporter of, did float the idea of giving work permits to asylum seekers, then backed off when the backlash hit. Surprise, surprise. But he did say something revealing. He wants Ontario to be treated like Quebec. And that's a big statement because Quebec has its own immigration agreement with the federal government. It chooses immigrants based on its own criteria, especially French language skills. The other provinces wanted that same level of control, not to shut down immigration, but to manage it based on local labor needs and infrastructure. Ontario's immigration minister David Piccini said it plainly and loudly. The province needs more funding to deal with the strain asylum seekers are placing on social services. And Saskatchewan's immigration minister said provinces want to be partners, not just stakeholders. Translation: stop treating us like we're here to rubber stamp all of your choices. I mean, because they're not. But even experts are worried because former UN refugee official Ninette Kelly said the provincial programs have expanded dramatically over 20 years. But there's been zero evaluation of how they're actually working. There's no data, no outcomes reporting, no feedback loop whatsoever. Just a constant cycle of reactive policymaking driven by political needs and media headlines. So, how can we give them new powers if this cycle continues? What's the solution here? Well, it's not giving every province total control. That's for sure. Can you imagine Dougie having total control of immigration? That would fracture Canada's immigration system and turn it into patchwork at best. But neither is the solution maintaining the broken status quo that we have now in Ottawa. That's for sure. What we need is a real evidence based national review, a top to bottom reset with economists, demographers, provinces, municipalities, and yes, you, Canadians. This review doesn't need to take years. It just needs to start. It needs to be honest. It needs to be transparent, and it needs to be rooted in real data, not ideology or legacy Trudeau era talking points. And it needs to answer fundamental questions like what are the economic outcomes of each immigration stream? How are services like healthcare, education, and housing going to be affected by it? And can we adjust targets annually based on measurable provincial capacity? Or are there better pathways to permanent residence for workers already contributing? Because here's the thing, folks. Let's be clear here. If we don't restore trust in our immigration system, we risk something far worse than housing unaffordability. We risk the collapse of one of the few things Canada used to get right, and we were reveled for: our reputation as a welcoming but responsible nation. Immigration is vital to any country, including Canada. It always has been. But a system with no brakes, no plan, and no accountability is not immigration policy. It's negligence. Trudeau lit the match and Carney's pouring gas on the fire. And the provinces? They're trying to put out the fire before it burns their budgets to the ground. We need reform. That's the bottom line. Immigration reform is a must. We need honesty, and most of all, we need leadership that puts Canadians and newcomers on equal footing instead of pitting them against each other in a crumbling, overburdened system they can't even live in. This isn't about closing the door to anyone. It's about fixing the foundation so the right people can come in. Because if we don't even have a door left to open. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. Don't forget to comment below. What would you do with this system? What needs to change? Do you agree with my questions that I mentioned earlier? Let me know. Let's have this conversation in the comments. I always enjoy your talking points. And once again, happy Tuesday. We'll catch you tomorrow.